Hello, my loves. Welcome to Viva Vibrant. My name is Kellyanne, and here is our collective compassion message for the week. It's really for today, August 9th. Why am I saying August? February. It's my birth month. Why did I say August? I don't know. Maybe there's some fall energy to this because the energy today is about shadow work. Ooh, ah. If you don't know what shadow work is, it's the essence of peering into those dark places within us and not shunning them or shaming them, just accepting them for what they are, listening to the stories that they have to tell, paying attention to those emotions that feel negative or that we have labeled as negative, and not only allowing ourselves to feel those emotions, but accepting that they have a story to tell too, that there is a reason for why we have these emotions. Nature doesn't make anything by mistake. That's why we have emotions. Emotions are a part of that very integral experience in living, in feeling alive. It's in the name, feeling alive. So for us, we're going to really power down the operating stance of like January 1st was the new year. We're gonna just boop 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 boop. Turn that off, shut that down, because we actually have our astrological new year coming in March. So right now, as of today, it's about 1 month. We're 1 month out from the astrological new year. So this is actually the best time because this is the end of winter. We're about to lead into spring. The end of winter is a really great time to reflect and pay attention to all the lessons and all the things that we've learned um, from the year that we've had. And I think some of us get caught up when we're reflecting on the conflicts that we had or the challenges that we faced. So I want y'all to understand that this reflection is not meant to be like a laundry list of all the things that went wrong or all the things that disrupted the path that you were on to get to the goals that you made at the beginning of the year. We can often look at our lives as though it's one series of unfortunate events after another. And this isn't even what I have written for my for my topics to address in this video. I just am getting the sense right now that some of us need to hear this. And it's because psychologically we are attuned and we're primed to pay attention, to pay more attention to the things that have gone wrong and the mistakes that we've made and the failures along the way, the negative things, the things that feel bad to think about, than we are to the things that feel good to think about. So while you assess and while you reflect on the year that you've had, and you do the shadow work part, which is getting into the parts that were buried or the moments in which you were like, I could have done that better. And in fact, maybe I should try and ask around in here who was the one who took over while the thing that I could have done better happened as it did. We have versions of ourselves who take over in certain instances. If you know anything about internal family systems, then you will understand that sometimes our inner child is not yet healed about some things, and the wounded self comes out, the wounded inner child comes out. Sometimes we fear conflict And so the avoidant parent that we had mirrored for us by our parents or guardians um, tries to subvert and, leave the space where conflict is happening. And the thing that goes wrong is later down the line, because the conflict wasn't confronted, there are resentments that have built up. And now we are where we are, and forgiveness and grace needs to be given. But whose responsibility is it to give? And whose responsibility is it to take accountability for how things played out? The shadow work assessment that we need to address is not only those flaws and failures that we perceive as things having gone wrong, but also moments in which the challenge led us to step up. The hard things we approached with bravery, or things were easy and light and non-exhaustive. We had wonderful times with friends. We shared arts and crafts or drinks and snacks. Those need to be addressed too, because while it doesn't seem like the fun things should be a part of shadow work, or um it doesn't the name shadow work doesn't lend itself to the light fun things that made us laugh or made us feel joy. A part of shadow work is grounding ourselves in the aspects of the work that we're doing to cultivate a life that we feel loved in and that we feel joy in. A part of that work is paying attention to when we get it right and when we veer off the path. And how will you know how far off the path you are if you don't pay attention to what went right? If you don't pay attention to and give credit where credit is due. The thing about shadow work is sometimes we assess for the most dramatic. We assess for the worst case scenario. We assess for the the parts that make us question if we're in our villain era. And that makes us think that the work is shadowier than it actually is. Makes us believe that we have so much more work to do than we actually need done. I say that because I have a feeling that if you're watching this, you have been doing shadow work from a perspective of, I want to do life better. I want to do relationships better. I want to do emotional healing and an emotional intelligence and emotional maturity better. I want to do social situations more calmly and more groundedly. I want to do relationships with more acceptance for the discomfort that meeting with disagreement or disrespect needs from me. As in, I I want to do better at conflict. I want to do better at communication. I want to do better at paying attention to my own resentments as they build up so that I can set boundaries earlier rather than waiting until my lid blows off or waiting until somebody else's lid, causing somebody else's lid to pop off because they're feeling all the things that we're not saying. They're getting this sense from us within our relationship that there's something buried and there's something that needs to be, ah. And so what they do is they laugh, and it causes us to go, well, I have some of that to give to you too. Wah 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 to you too. It's like when somebody throws up and it causes other people to vomit. It's like that. It's like somebody going, there's some toxicity in here that has made me conscious of how it's maybe not even mine. It's maybe not even mine. And so that's what the shadow work is for, so that we can do better at recognizing when we are crossing our own boundaries, so that we can do better at life, so we can do better at relationships and emotions, and we can do better at our perspective shifting and not staying caught up in our own heads, so that we can do better at getting out of our heads and back into our heart space, so we can not get so overwhelmed in the overthinking cycles that we we develop like a stuckness that maybe sometimes feels more comfortable, even though it's uncomfortable. It's like a familiar kind of uncomfortable. And we choose that instead of the parts around it, which is like settling into some of the thoughts that we're circling around. That is how we do life better, is by continuing to address the things that are right in front of us, that are trying to get our attention. That's what overthinking the majority of the time has us try, is trying to get us to confront. And that's the purpose that it serves. Shadow work is the thing that we do actively, consciously, intentionally to address the things that want to be addressed, that we've been putting to the side because we just don't have time or energy or the bandwidth to give it our attention. And notice how I'm saying pay attention and give attention a lot throughout this video already. Our attention spans, not so great. Our attention spans have definitely shrunk a little bit. And I think that too leads us to believe that when we reflect on the year that's passed, or we reflect on the conflicts we've had in our relationships and whether we've gotten better at being able to address them, what we do is we start with the things that hurt. We, like I said, we are trained, we're conditioned psychologically to notice the things that went wrong first, and then we have short attention spans. So we lose focus. Our attention drifts to something else, and the shadow work is done for that day. The shadow work is done for that moment. All of the reflection that we're doing, it's we've done enough. We've gotten to a certain, I think like a part of the attention span being so short is not just being on social media and doing the scroll, flipping through, but it's also meeting with discomfort and not addressing it immediately. Not addressing it in the way that discomfort signals for us to address things. Like when you're uncomfortable, that's a warning light. That's the maintenance light on your car dashboard telling you something needs to be checked out. So what we do is we bury the discomfort under something else that's a little more comfortable, but uncomfortable in a different way for us. We go off on tangents on things that we really care about that don't actually matter right now in this moment. We go on our social media commenting sprees where we're, fighting with strangers online. We will cause ourselves other kinds of discomfort so that we can push to the side the discomfort that actually is asking to be addressed. So this leads me to my next point here, that this time, February, not August 9th, and the days surrounding it are a great time for us to pay attention to, here we are again, the conflict that keeps us in battle mode or fixing mode. Because there are some impulses there underneath the compulsion to fight or the compulsion to fix, which is a kind of fawning, a kind of, woo, 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 let's make everything okay. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. There's a compulsion there underneath all of that, underneath those sorts of reactions to conflict that distracts us from gaining perspective. Now, conflict is a really scary word. It's really, really scary because some of our relationships, relationships is crazy. Some of our relationships have been destroyed. The child voice is killing me. Some of our relationships have been destroyed by conflict, and it's been very hard and very upsetting, and we grieve. We grieve a lot about the relationships in the past that have been destroyed because of the confrontation of things that are uncomfortable. Whether disagreement, whether it's disrespect, whether it's crossed boundaries, there have been conflicts that we felt like we couldn't come back from, where people didn't listen to us or we shunned other people because we just couldn't handle their point of view. We couldn't handle whatever perspective we would have gained by listening to their side of the story. Again, it's our internal family systems at work. It's the wounded inner child responding instead of the kind, compassionate adult, the mature adult. It's the hero and the rescuer inside of us who sees the wounding happen and goes, what we need to do is we need to fight that person so that they know how they hurt us. They can feel as hurt as we feel. And that way we can make it all better. We'll make sure that they never do it again. But that is an impulse that is destructive. The impulse to stay wounded and to not listen to other people's side of the story is an impulse that distracts us from the kind of perspective that we could gain from conflict that would help us become more centered, help us become more present, help us be uncomfortable in a way that makes us better at relationships, makes us better at emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. That is the shadow work. The shadow work is resisting the impulse to destroy a relationship before it's even had a chance to resolve a rupture. And now that's not the case for every single relationship. Not every relationship deserves resolution. Not every relationship has proven or has earned trust in the sense that you've built over time an understanding that this person, push come to shove, would never try to hurt me on purpose or never try to make me feel bad about myself on purpose. And so the benefit of the doubt that I need to give them is that we've built up enough trust that when I am hurt by something they did or something they said, that I take the time that I need and I communicate that I need time, but then I come back even while I'm still uncomfortable, even when I don't feel ready to face whatever it is that caused this conflict to confront me and smack me in the face like it did. What we need from our shadow work is to compel us toward better relationship building and being able to cultivate right relationship with others. Because the worst possible thing that we could do is lose our attention span right after we've we've checked our notes about all the bad things that happened, but stop just short of taking responsibility and holding ourselves accountable for how we dismissed the next stage of a conflict, the next part of confronting something that's facing us head on. Because ultimately, relationships go two ways, go both ways. And this is, I talk a lot about relationships in my conversations with y'all and my discussions about these compassion-oriented topics because relationships are the vehicle through which we experience a fulfilled, joyful life. And they are also the vehicle through which we test out new theories about how to live a better life. And if those theories in practice don't allow for us to live a better, more connected, healthy life, as in my theory about conflict in relationships is that it's better to just cut people off and call it a day. If what you find in practicing that is that you feel isolated and alone because some of your most long-term relationships are being dismantled by this theory that cutting people off is better, then you need to address, you need to not stop short in the shadow work, reflecting on what happened in those relationships. You need to not stop short of that taking accountability and that responsibility that you have to addressing how I might have been, I might have been responsible for, it might have been me who was to blame for that theory playing out and not proving to make me feel better about myself and better about my life and better in my connections. Because not only am I now in practice starting over all the fucking time, every time there's just one conflict, there's just one instance of being hurt. I start over again. It's not really fulfilling to just discard people like that. And it's also not fulfilling when the reverse happens. When I feel like this was a misunderstanding, I would love to be able to explain where I was coming from. Why won't you listen to me? Because if the other person that you're in conflict with, for the first time in your relationship, maybe after a long relationship, if the first time, and I'm speaking from experience, I literally just had two 8-year relationships end. And because the rupture was discomfort that I caused them, that they never listened to my side of the story about. So my theories have sometimes in relationships been it's better to just wipe my hands clean and say, you know what? I'm going to take note of how this person treated me and just choose to believe that they are going to treat me like that again in the future. If the first conflict that you have with somebody in after 8 years of being close to them and developing connection through compassion with them is the moment where you decide this is where I'm going to apply the theory of isolationism, of fuck youism, then what you're going to find is that a lot of the things that you have built will feel very crumbly and like you can't trust people that you even build new relationships with because the story that you're writing is that I can't trust people that I even have long-term relationships with, that I thought that I built trust with. How am I supposed to trust new people if I just discarded the person who was there for me in my darkest hours for 8 years? The reverse, when that happens, of like, my theory is that it's better to just let people go and to just release them from my life at the first sign of conflict, is going to teach you exactly where the responsibility lies. Because if you are willing to take accountability for how you've hurt somebody and you tell them and you communicate with them, I'm sorry for the hurt that I've caused you. And I can't take it back that I hurt you, but I would love to mitigate some of that hurt because I don't believe you deserve to feel that way. And it feels like the stories that we have don't match up. So I would love to be able to tell you my story, my side of the story, so that we can start to figure out what went wrong and what was miscommunicated. If you are the one who is there being the one who hurt somebody, who initiated conflict because you had the you behaved in such a way that had the initiating, incident, and the other person treats you in the way that you've theorized is the best way for relationships to happen. First sign of conflict, it's over. It's over and done. Bye forever. See you never. Then you will start to realize that the responsibility is on both parties to attend to what is confronting you both and not allow the theory that you have to keep playing out, to keep being the reason that you follow the impulse to shun and to release somebody from your life and choose to separate without hearing them out. The theories that we have about life, when we reflect on them in shadow work, they need to go beyond the point of the theoretical. We need to have like context for how those theories have played out, make note of the relationships in which those theories proved to us that in practice, they're good for us and they're healthy and they're healing and they're responsible. And then through that shadow work, if we're reflecting and we've assessed this is a bad theory, as in the thing that I believe about relationships feels bad in practice and not just uncomfortable. Let's separate the two because feeling bad is like, I lost something big. I'm grieving bigly. Uncomfortable is like, I'm confused, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. There is a difference between having emotions that make you feel uncomfortable as a result of a crossed boundary or a disagreement, and the bad, the big bad of honest to goodness grief of like, this thing has died. If you have tried to resuscitate a relationship after after rupture and you both participate in repair, because your theory about life is we both need to come together whenever there's conflict, both parties need to come together and need to understand where the misunderstanding was before we can decide how to address it, instead of one party making the decision of how to address the conflict by themselves in isolation. Then you have that conflict, you discuss it with the other person, you have a face-to-face instead of text or email conversation. You get their facial expressions, you get their emotional resonance, you get their tone, you get to see them contemplate the consequences of their actions, and you in turn get to experience the consequences of your actions. And you still have just this this disagreement that you realize means we have high-ranking values. We have things like respect and integrity and authenticity and honesty, high-ranking values that are still misaligned. And now this conflict is the thing that's exposing that misalignment. Then you might decide that together, we're just not that great together. And this thing is actually needing to be eulogized. There were great things about this relationship. I'm sorry for all the ways that this, that we weren't able to connect about this thing. I really loved these moments in our relationship, and it really sucked to have come to resent this thing about you or this thing about myself through our relationship. And I will remember our relationship fondly because of this thing that we got to have from it. And I am now saying goodbye. If you get to have that closure and you get to have that closing of relationship, then that's where we feel the big bad, where we feel that grief of it's over, it's done, it's dead. There's no resuscitating it. There's no reviving it. We tried, and what we found is that it wasn't something that we both felt we could sustain if we brought it to life again. And that is a good way to figure out whether or not a relationship is worth the energy, is actually talking with people, like actually talking with the your loved ones and the people that you care about to assess and reflect on the relationship and assess for whether it is worth the energy necessary, not only to repair, but to sustain once repair has been addressed. It's it's a perspective shift that shadow work can give us to differentiate between feeling bad and that grief that comes with this sucks. and it hurts and there's a hole in my heart. To differentiate between that and feeling uncomfortable. I'm angry that this person said this thing to me, and I don't know why they would say it to me. You should probably ask them about it. I'm really confused about why this even happened. You should probably ask about it. I'm feeling really hurt and betrayed by this person. You should probably talk to them about it. All of that discomfort can be labeled as bad. Anger can be labeled as bad. Frustration can be labeled as bad. Confusion can be labeled as bad. Betrayal can be labeled as bad. Disappointment can be labeled as bad. Hurt can be labeled as bad. But it's not. It's not the worst because it's not death. It is, in fact, uncomfortable, and it is, in fact, conflict, which means that you are confronting something that you would not have otherwise, or that you could have, or that the other person could have if they waited too long to address a boundary or to set a boundary with you about something. But it is not the big bad because it's not the death of the relationship. It is feeling uncomfortable. And shadow work helps us differentiate between the times in our relationships where we chose to uh, gah, throw something back into the lake, throw a fish back into the lake because it was already dead and there's no resuscitating it. And we both have tried. The thing is, you gotta both try. You gotta both participate. Or the fish floundering on the ground and you going, I don't know what to do about this. And so you run away. There is a difference between those things, and being able to pay attention to the impulses that you have to fight or to fix or to fawn that lead up to conflict can help you to manage the way that you enter conflict, the way that you treat conflict once you are in it, and the way that you confront repair when it's time and you're ready but not ready. You embody the bravery that it takes to enter the dark cave of discomfort with somebody else and just play, Marco Polo in there until you finally reach each other and you finally connect again. Because the alternative is that the perspective you continue to maintain on relationships is one that is not grounded in reality and one that keeps you from being able to actually hold relationships with a sense of empowerment. Because our only point of power, so many of you have heard me say this before, our only point of power is from the present. And so that means your presence in a relationship, your presence in a state of emotions is where you draw power from. And if you're not able to stay present with it, you run away or you shun somebody or you talk to everybody in your life except for that person that you have conflict with about the conflict or about just that person's character or you try to build upon a story that wasn't true before the conflict, but now fills in the gaps of the story that you are not getting from the actual person that you have conflict with, then the presence that you don't have means there is power that you were just giving away. And what you're left with is an ungrounded reality, which isn't based in the truth, which isn't based in what's real. It's based on stories that you are telling yourself because you are the one who's filling in the blanks, as opposed to assessing for how you are accountable and assessing for which parts you are responsible for maintaining through relationship rupture in which you are initially the hurt party. And I say initially because I guarantee you, if the relationship is worth repairing, then the other person is hurting too when there is conflict. As soon as you tell somebody that you are hurting because of something they did or something they said, they are then hurting too if they care about you and they have compassion. It is a monthish, about a month until the astrological new year. And so I want to address, I want us to make our best effort to address the stories of conflict, to address the stories of our battle mode or our fixing mode that we go into, the impulse to fight, the impulse to fawn and pretend everything is fine, the impulse to abandon shadow work before it gets good, before we get into the darkest parts. I want us to address that as we head into the astrological new year, because in the same way that for the Gregorian calendar, January 1st is a time when everybody makes New Year's resolutions, the astrological new year is also a time for us not just to make resolutions for an entire 12-month period, but for us to gain perspective on where we've been so that we can understand the perspective we would like to achieve as we continue on. It is so valuable to be able to use the 12 cycles of the astrological wheel to continually assess for the things that we've reflected on. And if we don't reflect, then we don't have any concept of what to be on the lookout for. And in the same way that we are conditioned to pay a lot of attention to the negative things and the mistakes and the flaws and failures, we also, our brains are trained to assess for the things that we pay the most attention to and the things that we give uh, more of our attention to. It's called priming. And when you prime your mind to see certain specific things, like you prime your mind to see the color blue, then what you're going to do as you head off into the rest of the year ahead of you, or even the next 3 weeks or the next 3 months as you develop new habits and you have your perspective shifts and things change and you become primed for seeing new things. What you're going to be on the lookout for, if you've primed your mind through reflecting, through shadow work, for recognizing the color blue, and the color blue signaling something that you need to give your attention to, then what's your brain going to do? Your brain's going to tell you every time it sees the color blue. And then you start to actually shift. you start to actually change in real time. You start to, it's the same as a plant with its leaves following the path of the sun. It's like you're only going to shift your focus on things that you are willing, raise my hand, things that you are willing to angle your focus toward. It's not a passive thing for you to just decide, you know what? My shadow work has shown me that I have, and I'm going to speak from my own experience right now. My shadow work has shown me that I have a real problem with sitting with other people's discomfort and not immediately trying to pull them out of it or convince them that their stories are hurting them. And in fact, sometimes I just need to let people have their stories and offer them my perspective when they ask, because that shows that they are ready, not ready, that they are brave enough to maybe not be totally ready to hear what I have to say, but are at least brave enough to choose the act of bearing that part of their soul that shows you, I don't like this story. And without anybody else having to tell me, I can already sense that this story is disempowering because it feels ungrounded and it doesn't allow me to live in the present. I'm time traveling in my mind. I'm traveling into the past and asking myself, where were the signs? Where were the signs and the red flags that should have told me that this person was going to hurt me? I'm finding that I'm time traveling into the future, and I'm anxious about the next time that you might hurt me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the present, and I'm going to ask for your perspective, so that all of the things that I thought were true, I can validate and confirm by asking you, what is true for you? My shadow work has led me to pay attention to the color of allowing other people to find their bravery and seek to ground themselves back into the present through reality and not just feel good storytelling. The feel good storytelling is if you have a theory that you should that you should abandon somebody the moment they seem like they might abandon you, then the feel good storytelling you say to yourself is at the first sign, at the first instance of somebody appearing to abandon you, maybe sounding a little like they want to abandon you or they're rejecting you in some way, that the best, most good feeling story you can tell yourself is that is what they are going to do. And in fact, they would have done it sooner if I hadn't been giving all of these parts of me that made me valuable to them. And now they just don't see the value in me anymore, or they think I'm too much, or they think I'm not enough. And so I am going to abandon them before they officially abandon me. I know that it may sound like it's a not good storytelling, it's a not good feeling storytelling, but in fact, all of the bad, quote unquote, bad feelings that we have, and you know what? I need to keep that distinction because I'm learning too. the difference between the bad feelings and discomfort, uncomfortable feelings. So let's bring the uncomfortable feelings into view. The moment that we feel uncomfortable feelings, we are very likely to story tell about them. And what we often do, even though those feelings are uncomfortable, is we find something to feel good about. Even though I don't like, here's my example for me. Even though I don't like being enraged at men, even though I don't like in my mind telling myself rage fantasies and rage baiting myself in stories about men because they don't feel good for me, they do feel good. There is something that does feel good about them that I feel good in being angry about because it reinforces a belief that I have. It reinforces a theory of life that I have, which is that men have it better than women, and so they sometimes treat us like we're objects or like we don't matter. And whether or not that reality is true sometimes doesn't matter to my brain that is holding on to the belief, that is holding on to the perspective and the theory that men have it better, and so they have a superiority complex that makes us them treat us women and non-binary folks and trans folks like shit. It doesn't matter so much that the rage I feel is uncomfortable if I get some good feeling out of it. If the story that I tell myself comforts me in some way. There's a fun dichotomy where the discomfort in the emotions that we experience sometimes reinforces the comfort of the beliefs and the stories that we tell ourselves about what's happening when those uncomfortable feelings and emotions show up. And the interplay between the comfortable and the uncomfortable can be something that is really hard to address and assess for. In your shadow work, as you reflect on the year that's gone by, the astrological year that's gone by, over the next month that we have time to reflect, be on the lookout for, prime your mind now to be on the lookout for. I want to be on the lookout for the uncomfortable emotions and the comforting stories that I tell myself when I experience those uncomfortable emotions. I guarantee you, if you repeat that phrase and you maybe even write it down just to solidify it, I am on the lookout for the uncomfortable emotions that cause me to tell comforting stories that make me feel good in spite of feeling bad. What you are going to find over the next month is that the shadow work will come to you. And I mean that in a confrontational way, but not in like a destructive way, not in an embattled kind of way. In a, hey, you've believed in fairies all this time, and now you're actually asking to see the fairies. The fairies are going to start revealing themselves to you. They're going to start confronting you. And it's time for you to have a conversation with them. It's your opportunity. Confrontation and conflict is an opportunity for connection. And so if you want to connect more with those stories that you are telling yourself to feel comfortable and feel more familiar with the discomfort that causes you to play out some really destructive patterns in your relationship to yourself or your relationship to others, what you're going to find is if you are willing and you name and you prime for addressing the the good feeling uncomfortable, then what you're going to find is less resistance to the bad feeling uncomfortable. The bad feeling uncomfortable that is a mix between, like we said, burp, those uncomfortable feeling emotions and the big bad, which is grief. Recognizing, ooh, there are some uncomfortable emotions that I've had that have led me to tell good feeling stories because I would rather do that than differentiate between the discomfort in me that is decaying and rotting parts of my life's garden that I've been trying to cultivate joy from, and the actual discomfort that comes from the beauty and joy and aliveness and richness of my life. There's a decaying, needing to die, big bad requires us to grieve kind of discomfort that sometimes we tell good feeling stories about because we're trying to put off that that RIP, that eulogy, that funeral. And then there's some discomfort that we don't account for because we're avoiding all of our discomfort. And once we piece through and we separate out the discomfort that needs us to grieve and the discomfort that needs us to pay more attention to the beauty that already exists in our lives, then we start to be able to cultivate more fulfillment. And we start to do shadow work in a way that actually works. So that it's not just work that goes unfulfilled, right? As in, like, you start a project and then you don't finish it and you don't complete it and you never get to see the outcome, the benefits of the outcome and the goal that you had in mind for starting that project. But you get to the other side and really embrace a grounded, present empowerment in the now that respects the way that you've been feeling, but responds to the emotions that have needed your confrontation and needed your connection. We've got a month. Prime your mind to find those things, and I promise you, not only will you see them more, but also you will start to become more and more comfortable, less and less uncomfortable, we'll say, less and less uncomfortable with addressing them when they confront you and connecting with them when they are just trying to hear from you and just trying to gauge how you're feeling now about it. I have some getting unstuck resources on my Patreon, which for as little, I think as low as $5 a month, you can subscribe to and have access to all of those resources. But I'm just like tuning into how I feel like they would be helpful for some of you. I just, I get this sense that the discomfort that we are in need of addressing right now is a kind of stuckness. And if you feel like it's a pit and I don't know how to climb out, and honestly, Kellyanne, it sounds really great. It sounds really great to become less uncomfortable, but I don't even know where to begin. Baby, I've got a Getting Unstuck slash Out of the Pit entire series that I created that's on my Patreon, where if you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you will have access to not only those resources, but some other meditations that I've made that can help you to detach from and release those good feeling stories that have comforted you into accepting a certain kind of decaying discomfort that's that's not for you anymore. That's why you've been watching this till the end here. You're ready for something different, you're ready for something new. And so I hope that you check out the Patreon because it might be for you. My Dr. Seuss moment of the day. I also do one-on-one card readings. So if you would like a tarot or oracle card reading or an archetype reading, I just did some archetype readings for people pleasers in recovery, as well as for highly sensitive people. I've got those card readings up right now, and I'm about to record my perfectionist recovery archetype reading today. We're getting into archetypes, we're getting into identities, we're getting into those roles that we play that maybe aren't actually roles we want to keep playing. Ah, if you would like that kind of reading, not only am I doing it for general guidance, so be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, but also I do them one-on-one. I do 1 hour or 2 hour card readings that you can book through my Zoom scheduler link, which is in the description for this video. And what you get is not only a recording of the reading that we get to do together, but you get to ask all the questions that you have for for the span of an hour, for the span of 2 whole hours. You get to ask all the questions that you have about, like, where do I start? Or, what do I do about this pattern that I know, that I know about, that is making me uncomfortable, but I keep telling myself stories that make it hard for me to break away and develop new stories. I would love to address those with you. I would love to pay attention to those alongside you so that, there's not like a coach or a therapist uh doing that work for you, but there's somebody to just reflect back. I mean, this is a time, like I said, this is a time of reflection. I would love to be that person to reflect back to you the things that you already know about yourself and you already know about the situation and the patterns that you just need to hear said in a slightly different way so that it fucking clicks, so that the next step clicks. Because that's what I'm about, is helping people to get that clarity to click so that it gives them the confidence to face the next challenge head on. I'm all about confrontation and challenge, but I'm about it in a compassionate way. I want you to be a witness to your own suffering so you can be the one to do something about it because you are the one who has you in your life for the rest of your life. And for that reason, my goal is never to replace the inner voice that you have, but is always to help build it up so that you can be the person that you rely on. And then you can build relationships from that place so that the relationships that you have, you can start to rely on just as much too. You deserve that. Everybody deserves that. You deserve it. You deserve all the love that you desire. You deserve the confidence and the clarity to take the next step toward whatever confrontation or conflict or challenge that you have ahead of you. And I want to be there for you. And if it's not me, please have conversations with your friends about it. Build community around it. Go and find a writing club. If there's there's a chapter, two chapters of Shut Up and Write, which is a national organization. I don't know if it's an organization or whatever, but Shut Up and Write is something that I attend every Saturday at my local Barnes and Noble, and it's been really wonderful to have people who are outside of like my normal experience that I would normally be meeting to get to just address some of these things with, but in a way that's accountable to me, like me being accountable to myself and not other people therapizing or, solving my problems for me or anything like that. Like it just feels good to be connected to other people while we do hard things. So if it's not with me, then connect with people, connect with other people so you can do those hard things not in isolation, not alone. Capitalism will try and teach you that rugged individualism is the way that we have to do everything, and it's not. I urge you to prime your mind to see other paths for community and connection which help you face the challenges that you choose to address next. I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day. Mwah. Mwahs.